Hello, and thank you for joining us. We're going to be starting the webinar in about 1 minute. We're just going to give everyone a chance to log in. Thanks. All right, welcome to the webinar. This is the Miro Consulting webinar on IBM's recent changes, including Cloud, Cloud Packs, Red Hat, and more. My name is Sean Donahue, and I'm the VP of Marketing and the lead Salesforce analyst here at Miro Consulting, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Your presenter today will be Sharon Tremblay, our senior analyst leading our IBM practice. Sharon has been at Miro for about 7 years now. She is a multidisciplinary and also assists in Miro's Oracle team on projects. Prior to working at Miro, she worked at IBM for 10 years. Like many members of Miro's team, Sharon is an analytical project manager with strong research skills. She has a bachelor's in computer science, a master's in information technology management, and a current project management certification from PMI. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly explain who Miro is. Miro Consulting is a leading global provider of software asset management and subscription management services for Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, Adobe, and Salesforce. We specialize in license management, audit advisory, negotiation tactics, support management, and cloud services. Our mission is to help our clients maximize their ROI on their software license and subscription investments and stay in compliance and negotiate successful contracts and audit settlements. And with that, I will turn it over to Sharon to begin the presentation. Sharon?
Thank you, Sean. IBM has always been a company of change. So it's, now and then people will say IBM's a dinosaur, but they're always, with the research and development, get a leader in patents year over year. So it's not necessarily about the day-to-day business. They are interested in everything that has to do with computing. So that's why I put together this presentation just on all the changes that have happened at IBM in like the past year or so, because since we've last had a webinar of this type rather than a specific IBM topic. IBM's had a change of leadership. They've bought Red Hat. What's going on with cloud, because everybody's always interested in cloud. They've introduced Cloud Packs and Flex Points. They sold some titles to HCL, and they've also changed up some of their mainframe software pricing. And mainframes are still popular. They're not, they're even now people still buy mainframes. I used to work on mainframe projects too when I was an IBM employee. And there's also mainframe as a service in the cloud. So there is a lot of potential there still with mainframes, even though most people think mainframes are old news. So with the change of leadership, although the change is important to IBM and what direction we can predict it will take, it does not currently impact today's on-premise software licensing, which is what Miro normally deals with. There's been more cloud, more open source, new technologies like blockchain, containers, cognitive computing, and hybrid multi-cloud too. Since my finger's more on the pulse of license compliance here at Miro and software audit defense, I'm behind on seeing all of these things truly in action, but I am aware that other software vendors use IBM products within theirs, like ServiceNow. Virtual Agent has been integrated with Watson Assistant. So I might see it with other analysis of products or in other environments that you might not necessarily think of seeing IBM software. I confess I have a higher level of excitement about new and cool tech and wondering how it can be used outside of licensing software and audits. Though if more IBM software ends up in other vendor software or their hosted services, that adds more dimension to what I get to touch with hosted solutions or with IBM partner world relationships, royalties, and more Red Hat. Red Hat's not just Linux. I don't know how some people just think it's Linux, but it's not solely an operating system. Red Hat is a leading provider of enterprise open source solutions, and it's always been open source. And that's Linux too, but it's also cloud and container and Kubernetes technologies. Red Hat has always been an open source company and communicates with open source communities to produce better software. That's the advantage of open source. They have a community supporting it. The open source way of doing things is fast moving. Open source innovation. Open source allows the sharing of knowledge and building upon discoveries by others rather than being proprietary. It's collaborating to solve complex problems. Red Hat feels the technology of the 21st century should be open source. The symbol of their information revolution movement is that Red Hat. Um, sorry, I slipped. And Red Hat has long championed the benefits of open source. In a brief amicus filed with the Supreme Court of the United States for a case regarding software licensing, Red Hat said, far from encouraging innovation, vague software patents discourage it. The problem of vagueness is so endemic in software patents that it warrants action at the threshold level of subject matter eligibility. So some people were doubted IBM with their Red Hat purchase. That if it's open source, how do they make money? So Red Hat makes money with open source because even though open source, the source code is available, then you have to look at the license because you have that open source initiative, OSI, that's going to specify if they can copy, distribute, or modify your work. And there's a lot of potential with this that developers would need to release their source code for any open source program without charging a licensing fee for it. But so that's what's called the copyleft. But open source programmers can charge money for the open source software they create or to which they contribute. Though if it's a copyleft situation, releasing their own source code may not be profitable, but you can charge for the support. Pre-IBM, Red Hat earned more than $3 billion a year from supporting their open source software. They are a profitable company. Red Hat has contributed to more than 450 open source projects. Why would someone or a company use open source software is sometimes I hear this from some of our clients because they're adverse to open source. Well, price-wise, it might be financially sound to use open source, but also consider that many proprietary products are constructed to work with common open source software, such as Linux, Apache, Kubernetes, or OpenStack. So using open source will not lock you in to a specific path. IBM Cloud is, though what excites me even more is the IBM Quantum experience. That might be from, the fictional Improbability Drive from Hitchhiker's Guide, though. And it's not just SaaS. When you can bring your own IBM licenses to cloud, IBM's policy is online under BYOSL or Bring Your Own Software License and list the major public clouds. They're all at 70 PVUs per core, and you should use ILMT agents on these deployments too to keep on top of your licensing. IBM's cloud business has a sweet spot for regulated industries such as finance, energy, and government. IBM brings their robust security to the table with cloud, but with any cloud, security is always a shared responsibility. The client too has to take security seriously because even with IBM's a strong security background and strong security products, there's always going to be a weak link if the client does not take it seriously. IBM Cloud Packs is very interesting because it offers licensing flexibility while also providing management, security, and governance. Cloud Packs are containerized software solution optimized for productivity and performance, built on an integration layer that includes IBM middleware and common services for development and management. These can be run wherever Red Hat OpenShift can run: physical server, virtual servers, public cloud, and private cloud. But what Miro, because we're concerned about software licensing, that's what Miro does, um, is worried about, or I'm worried about, is because they're so easy to deploy, it may lead to easy to forget licensing. Cloud Pak licensing isn't as complex as other metrics from IBM, but it's going to take some tracking and calculations beyond what ILMT, that's IBM's license metric tool, can provide. So let's use Cloud Pak for applications as an example. This software is available from IBM as two different licensing metrics. It could be virtual processor core as a perpetual license or as a monthly license. So within the Cloud Pak are multiple versions of similar software to provide flexibility to IBM's customers. So it does benefit you in the terms of how you deploy it and how you can use it differently. But like other IBM flexible offers, it places a task on the customer to track what they deploy. And that's the tricky part about any of IBM's licensing flexibility, is it puts a burden on the customer. Either they'll have ELA terms, or here with the Cloud Packs, what did you deploy? So that's the trickiness of this. Even though you're given the flexibility, you have to keep track of what you're doing. So for every one virtual Cloud Pak license, I can deploy for this, if we look at middleware, I can deploy either one unit of, or one VPC of WebSphere application server network deployment, or I can deploy 4 of WebSphere application server, just plain old WAS, or I can deploy 8 VPUs of WebSphere Liberty, which is the one you'll see most often in containers because it's the light version of WAS. So this results in needing to know which middleware product is deployed. It's likely the product will be consistent in the throughout the environment, but someone along the way may see the 1-to-8 ratio that you saw with WAS Liberty and apply it when the enterprise does not use WAS Liberty in every deployment. Or they may overbuy licenses to address the possibility that at some point you can use WAS ND. So it's something that has to be tracked carefully to keep the right number of licenses, to prevent overbuying, and to prevent non-compliance. And the other flexible thing that IBM's offered is Flex Points. They have a calculator online, but IBM is offering a Flex Point bundles of multiple standalone software titles that have interconnected functionality. Like you'll see Cognos BI Analytics paired with TM1 Enterprise Planning, iLog, and SPSS, and they're all included in IBM's Data Science and Business Analytics bundle. And I find the FlexPoint concept interesting because sort of like the token metric for rational products, where the licenses or flex points can be used interchangeably for this product family. ILMT has been updated, which is that license metric tool that you're required to use for subcapacity. It's been updated to report flex points, and I've talked about ILMT before on many webinars, and it's the free tool they give you to get the best value out of your software licenses if you're using any kind of virtualization, so you can license by subcapacity, whether it's VMware, Hyper-V, LPARS on P-Series, I-Series, mainframe, and also cloud. And with IBM's Bring Your Own Software licenses or BYOSL PVU licensing, ILMT is pretty much necessary to contain costs. So what's ILMT going to do with Flex Points? After you set up the software classifications, of course, ILMT will look at both the sum of the bundle usage and also report the components. So let's say you have Cognos in your bundle and just a couple of users. That's better licensed by users then, like you do on premise. It'll add up the Flex Points for those users and include that in the details of the Flex Point report. On all the on the one report from ILMT, all IBM metrics report is going to list just the license consumption at the bundle level, but then there'll be the FlexPoints CSV file, and that has the details for all the products in the bundle, along with some new fields like peak date and metric quantity. So you can drill down deeper into what your utilization is, and if you are considering expanding, or if you have a compliance problem, you can kind of drill down and try to detect, be an inspector detector to figure out what's going on there, so you can control your licenses better and keep a better handle on it and remain compliant, or know what causes you to need more licenses. So what is FlexPoints good for? It's good for a flexible environment. For a stable long-term environment, I think traditional licensing is probably better for you. And also that's probably what you own, but new customers can buy Flex Points from the start. Existing customers need to enroll in the Flex Point model and then trade up licenses from traditional license models to Flex Points. Okay, last year in 2019, or they announced it sooner, IBM sold a lot of their titles to HCL. And HCL has previously worked with IBM on these products, so they're not new to the scene. HCL is a large IT services vendor based in India that's been in business for over 40 years with over 100,000 employees. But you have to know these software titles are no longer IBM, so IBM will not audit them or sell you more licenses. So if you still use Lotus Notes, some people are all in on Lotus Notes, and also BigFix or AppScan or Commerce or WebSphere Portal. These are all now HCL's products. And they haven't changed the metrics yet, but they may. You never know. And on mainframe, they've changed the pricing a little bit to make it easier or a better fit for customers. Container pricing for IBM Z was changed to tailored fit pricing for IBM Z, and these new pricing solutions will not be available for anybody that outsources to service providers. That's the one restriction here. Enterprise capacity solution, the full capacity licensing model, charges are for the size of the physical environment, offering predictability with fixed monthly costs to increase the capacity for development and test environments. All types of workload growth have reduced pricing. This pricing model removed the need for capping. The next one they introduced was Enterprise Consumption Solution, consumption or usage-based licensing model based on MSUs consumed and aggregated hourly. Charges are based on total MSUs, like we used to do, consumed annually, which allows for variation of seasonal workload patterns. And that's good for some industries like retail. This pricing model also removes the need for capping. And then the tailored fit for Z, that's our new one, requires establishing MSU and MLC. MLC is monthly license cost baseline. These are not new to mainframe, yet worth reviewing because the MSU baseline is the previous 12 months of MSU consumption, as reported by the subcapacity reporting tool, and plus any forecast MSU growth going forward. MLC baseline is the previous 12 months charges for IBM subcapacity MLC programs plus any forecast growth. So MLC is based on the System Z products running on your mainframe, such as ZOS, CICS, DB2, MQ, etc. And then you still have Enterprise Solution License Charges, or ESLC, and that will be a new type of monthly license charge, or MLC.
All right, thank you, Sharon. Just want to remind everyone that if you have a question, please put it in the question box in your webinar control panel, and we will answer all the ones that we have time for. We're going to start with some questions that were submitted during the registration process. And let me just also quickly remind everyone, if you tuned in late here because you either had issues logging in or you're busy or whatever, you just couldn't get in at the beginning of the webinar, we're going to send you a link to a recording so that you can review and catch anything we missed. So let me start with the first question. And this is a bit long, and I will summarize. Essentially, the person asking said they had to send their discovery to IBM to help clear up some software classification mappings. It's been a month. IBM hasn't gotten back to them. They think that IBM should be a little faster, and let me tell you, we all do. IBM is pretty slow on some things. So their question is, other than IBM LI Docs, is there an online reference somewhere that provides clear answers to what components roll up to the Cloud Pack for data product? Sharon?
Actually, I kind of live in LI Docs, so I know what they're meaning. Um, and for anybody else, LI Docs for any software product, if you go in there and you say, hey, what's embedded in here? What's a component that's part of this? That's where you're going to find it. Or if there's a limitation, some of them have, like if you, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but if there's a limitation that you only get 100 PVUs or 200 PVUs of the supporting product, that'll all be listed in there. And you can also look in the announcements too. But LI Docs is a little better. For Cloud Packs, I think there's an application navigator that's available, and there's IBM's knowledge portal that sometimes gives me, even though I'm only interested in licensing, sometimes gives me nuggets of what needs to be installed to get things working. And that's where I'll drill down into things, and also to kind of back up when they're saying I needed to install this to get this to run. So it may be in the Knowledge Center, and I think you can access that through support. And there might be some other stuff. And there's also a couple forums where, even though IBM's not an open source company, a lot of people are willing to share their knowledge. That's something I love about IBM is they don't keep things a secret as some other software vendors do.
Thank you, Sharon. We have one more question. It is much shorter. How do we streamline support and prevent year-over-year increases at 4%?
Ooh. There's really no guarantee that IBM will hold it at 4% because I sometimes see when there's a migration that it will go horribly wrong for a client because the metric has changed. And even though 4% is what IBM states, or 3% when they send out their announcement about price increases, it's not necessarily straight across the board. Some things change in different manner. So it's mostly about controlling the environment, looking for where you can slim it down, whether you can make virtual servers smaller, have less vCPUs allocated, or if there's something in the definition that might of that software that might help you, where there's an embedded software that you would only use with that software, but instead of buying it separately, there's a number of tricks that I'm always drilling down into that kind of brings it all together. And it could be moving to cloud could help you because a lot of the BYOSL tables have everything right now in public clouds being, except for Oracle, because of that weird OCPU. It's 70 PVUs per core. And if you had on-premise licensing and you move it to the cloud, if it was 100 PVUs per core and you move it to cloud, that might help you if it reduces it to 70 PVUs per core. And also when you're buying new hardware for on-premise installations, if you look at the PVU table, you can kind of plan ahead. Like some people might buy the 4-socket Intel Xeons instead of the 2-socket, and that has a big impact when it comes to the PVU calculation. So it's it's almost like you have to plan in advance, or go by the, seeing what rules of the game will benefit you, as opposed to um, just managing your business. There's a lot of quirky things. I'm sure IBM's not alone in that, but with the licensing, that might help you one way or another, where you might license by users instead of PVUs, where you might do some of the development packs are available with 20 authorized users instead of PVUs. So it depends on what you're using, that maybe there's a better metric for you. And depending on the willingness of IBM, sometimes they'll do some swaps for you, especially if you have an ELA, which IBM's largest customers have, where they can get enterprise caps, where they almost have like a catalog page in their ELA, so they don't have to forecast as well of what they're going to grow. And then they deploy things and then report it to IBM. And they have to be careful with an ELA, because or in an unlimited license agreement, because there's going to be a section where it says you must report something to IBM. So that puts some pressure on you to report something, even if you don't want to throw away that value by not reporting something.
Thanks, Sharon. And just as a quick reminder, if you're looking to reduce your renewal costs, you're looking to reduce your support costs, you're looking to reduce costs now for any one of our vendors that we do, Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, Adobe, and Salesforce, please contact us. We can certainly start helping you out right away, even if your renewal's down the road a bit. It's always great to get started early, get all your ducks in a row so you can have the maximum success there. We're almost at the top of the hour here. So if I haven't answered or gotten to your question yet, we will get back to you via email. So this is the end of the webinar. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any further questions that you might think of, email us at sales@miroconsulting.com, call us at 732-738-8511, or visit us on the web at miroconsulting.com. Thank you very much, and have a great day.